Have you reflected on what you are really searching for in this life? Have you identified what a lot of your core needs are? The things that you really need in order to be well, to be sharp, to be clear, to be effective? Have you identified what your personality type needs? Have you identified what fits well with your own unique makeup as a human being, from your values to your level of consciousness to your energy? There's not a lot of self-reflection going on in modern culture, and we tend to be quite emotionally unintelligent. And this is a huge problem. So without properly reflecting, you find yourself chasing things that you believe you want, but you don't actually want. So what does this actually look like? This looks like chasing mindless pleasure. And on some level, you think you want that next shiny object, that next X, Y, or Z, but in actuality, you really don't. In actuality, a lot of these surface level wants are ways that we avoid pain, emotional pain, and the pain of unmet needs, and ways in which we dance around and avoid looking into our core wants. Because what you really want will, odds are, really shake up your life. What do I mean by that? The things that are actually a good fit for you will probably deeply rearrange a lot of the core patterns in your life that create a sense of safety for you. You find yourself to be secure within those patterns, just your comfort zone. When you're able to identify the core things that you actually really want, this is a pretty big shift. This doesn't mean I want a particular object or anything like that, right? When I'm talking about what you really want, this can mean who you want to be, what you want your mind to look like, what you want your relationship to your emotions to look like, what you want your relationships to others to look like, what you want your work to look like. How do you want to give to the world? Right? We can ask questions like this. Do you want to self-actualize? Do you want to transcend the ego? Right? So we ask some powerful questions around this whole subject of what do we really want? Because you're going to want stuff in life. You already do want stuff. You want food and connection and sex and security and safety. And you're going to want things the rest of your life. So you might as well get clear about what you really want. You might as well get clear on the want that is beneath the want. What I mean by that is you might as well get to that core level want and identify it rather than remaining stuck at those superficial layers of what you believe you want, which aren't even what you actually want. So when we're able to honestly ask this question, inquire into it, and realize at times we don't know what we're truly searching for, this has the potential to change your life. I don't mean that in a corny way of change your life, right? This is going to change your life. But I mean that this will make changes to your life. Your practical everyday life will start to change once you realize how out of alignment with yourself you actually are. Once you begin to recognize that being so far out of alignment with yourself causes a lot of pain, you're going to want to shift. You're going to want to change things. To live a life that is deeply out of alignment with you is highly unfulfilling and extremely uncomfortable, because that life does not actually fit you. It probably wasn't even very consciously constructed by you, but it was the byproduct of various patterns and ideas and beliefs and wounds that were passed down onto you and picked up by your environment that conditioned you at a young age, and then you just kind of replayed that for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And this is something that a lot of people kind of take for granted, actually. Right? The whole idea of childhood conditioning. The average person doesn't really know how deep this actually goes. The average person doesn't really read up on it. They don't really study it. They don't really contemplate it very much. When in actuality, the overwhelming majority of your life is going to be dictated by the conditions that impacted you in childhood. And until you go back and you start healing some of this stuff, looking into it, you're just going to reenact all these unconscious patterns that you have without even knowing that you're doing so. You'll identify those patterns as just who I am, just how life works, just what it is, just how it has to be, when it actually just doesn't have to be that way. And we can have this part of us that genuinely wants to change, but then we can have a lot of other counter forces inside of us that don't want to change, that are afraid of making the change. They feel secure where they're at. So how do we even overcome this kind of resistance? To actually do this kind of self-inquiry work, to start looking into ourselves, requires us to be quite courageous, because we're going to be coming up against some difficult things. Because like I said, a lot of our surface level wants aren't things we want, but they're ways that we avoid pain, the pain of unmet needs and emotional pain that we've repressed from childhood or difficult times at any point in life. The pain of grief, loss, the pain of confusion and not knowing, the avoidance of our own mortality. Right? This is an entire thing, the denial of death, really. This underlying sort of covering up of the fact that we're going to die. This is studied in psychology, psychotherapy. I got a good book on my book list, The Denial of Death. Worth reading. So essentially, this kind of information that I'm giving to you right now, and this kind of like reflective energy that I'm giving you, has the potential to redirect what you are putting your energy towards on a daily basis. And it has the potential to redirect your energy towards your true desires, which are a form of intrinsic guidance. It's like an inner compass that you have to subtly attune to, right? Learn to actually listen to it. And if you're kind of blind to it, there's going to be a lot of pain that actually gets created because of that. Because a lot of your true desires are pointing you in the direction of like what actually works for you versus what doesn't, what actually aligns with you, what doesn't, what fits with you, what doesn't. And when your inner compass is so thrown off because of, let's say, one reason being years of people pleasing from childhood and needing to gain approval and acceptance from mommy, daddy, teachers, authority figures, etc., years of just drowning yourself out in favor of the opinions of others and just needing their acceptance because this is a survival need when you're growing up, right? Without that careful attunement to yourself, you're going to pick things that just don't actually work with you. Entire lifestyles, careers, relationships, diets, daily habits and patterns, beliefs. The whole big picture of your life gets thrown off because of this. Because of the fact that you can't attune to yourself well. You're not present with yourself. You're not able to listen to yourself. This is kind of strange right here, this idea of listening to yourself. Because there's a lot of ideas out there that say that, right, you already have all the answers inside of you, etc., right? This is very contextual. Right? So in order to listen to yourself counterintuitively, it's wise to get help from others. Listening to others helps you a lot. Learning from psychology books, from books on consciousness, books on non-duality, books on shadow work and therapy and healing, getting coaches, support, etc. Right? There's a whole sort of trend in a lot of the spiritual paradigms nowadays of just the outer world doesn't matter at all. No. Your outer world matters. Just like how your inner world matters. They both matter. And they both impact each other. go live in a horrible external situation and try and say that the outer world doesn't matter. You very quickly realize that it's not true. And nowadays, humans are extremely unaware of their own inner world and the impacts it actually has. So it is important to actually put the message out there of your inner world really mattering far more than what you probably think it does. Far, far more. Take your current idea of how much you think it matters and multiply it by 999,000. Arbitrary number, but you get the point that I'm putting out. So your true desires are an internal guidance mechanism that needs to be listened to. So when you're mindlessly scrolling on YouTube or your phone, what are you really searching for? When you're eating junk food, what are you really searching for? In a relationship, what are you really searching for? What do you even want out of relationships or your career? In a career, what do you actually want? What's going to fit you in your relationships and in your career? How do you even begin to determine which way to go? How do you even know what's going to fit you? Because you can't just have an answer, spew out the first thought that comes into your mind. You actually have to sit in an undistracted, environment and just contemplate this. Read books on it. Right? A mix of learning from others and learning all sorts of information, attachment theory, the psychology of relationships, spiritual perspectives on it, like the work of David Data, Robert Augustus Masters, the childhood dynamics that impact relationships and how they play themselves out, right? It's very wise to learn all that. And then to have time to actually sit down and inquire into your own core values. A lot of the things that simply work with you and that you're not really willing to give up. I think a good example of that for me would be like long meditation retreats. This is something that I very deeply value and I'm not willing to ever give them up. I love very long meditation retreats. They're the most clarifying thing that I've ever done in my life. There's just certain values and principles that you'll have that you just won't really want to give up because they just fit you so well. This is not about finding a particular dogma or ideology or principle that you're like instilled with and then just running off of that, right? Learn to question beliefs. But there's going to be things that bring you so much energy and well-being and they're so authentic to you that those things, after a deep inquiry and a lot of emotional labor, those things you don't sacrifice. You know what those things are. Right? It takes a lot of emotional work, a lot of inner work to actually start to get clear about what you actually care about. Especially nowadays because there's so much distractions everywhere. What are you even searching for when you're watching my videos? I'd recommend getting clear about that. So when you're triggered and lashing out at someone, what are you searching for? What are you actually wanting? This behavior of getting triggered and lashing out, it's trying to meet a need that you have to feel safe, grounded, secure, connected. Right, so I'm just giving you some of the answers with that one. I'm not going to spoon feed you too much though. I think other important questions are what wants to come through and what wants to be created through you. These are kind of the same thing. So the creation of and the continuous unfoldment of your life is going to be created through you. More so, I think a good way to describe this actually, might have kind of overspoken a little bit, a good way to actually describe this is more so that you're a vessel through which creation expresses itself. You're a vessel through which consciousness, universal consciousness, expresses itself into the world. And there's almost like a natural blueprint that you have to figure out. This natural blueprint about yourself that you got to figure out and kind of stick with it. Find the structures and patterns that really work well with you and condition yourself in the ways that are beneficial to you, that give you well-being and energy. And learn to process the conditioning that takes away from yourself. So you are a vessel that the universe uses to experience itself. You are a vessel that the universal flow of energy uses to express itself. You are a vessel that consciousness uses to witness and experience itself. Kind of like how electricity travels through superconductors with no resistance. Right? There's certain materials that just simply allow electricity to pass through it with zero resistance. Right? So if we can make ourselves like a superconductor and just allow the energy of life, the flow of life, the present experience and everything inside of it to move through us without resistance, essentially, you get closer and closer and closer to realizing this natural blueprint. You get closer and closer to realizing what really aligns with you, because a lot of that inner struggle begins to decrease. So what genuinely wants to be created through you? And give space for these kinds of questions to arise. Don't treat this like school, where they gave you an assignment and then you got to complete by tomorrow, and if you don't complete it, you're in trouble. That whole model, throw it out. Just sit with the questions. And don't force an answer. Just allow things to just come up slowly. And have a deep intention for them to come up. Allow the difficult answers to arise through the cracks in your beliefs and the cracks in your patterns. Because you have all sorts of patterns and beliefs and emotions that are keeping it all kind of suppressed and clouding a lot of things inside of you. Allow those core answers and those core intuitions to just kind of emerge through the cracks of them. And learn to just kind of not resist the process of discovering these things. Learn to actually embrace the uncertainty and the confusion and even the painful emotions that come with this stuff. And again, what alternative is there to never do any kind of reflective work or inquiry? To never do any inner work whatsoever? No self-actualization, no self-transcendence, which are human needs, by the way, meaning that if you do not get those things, your mind is going to be sick. Your soul is going to be sick. Your being is not going to be well. In the same way how when you don't get vitamin C, you get a vitamin C deficiency. Your body's not doing well. You need it in order to maximize your well-being. So it wants to be created through you. I think you actually already know the answers to a lot of this stuff too. I think a lot of you watching are very intuitive. And I think you, at some level, subtly recognize, many of you, the core things that you need to be applying attention to and doing in your life that align with you. I think a lot of you just recognize that, you know it. But there's all sorts of distractions. There's all sorts of ways to get thrown off course. So get very clear about it in your mind. Paint a very good picture of what exactly this stuff is. This doesn't mean have all the details figured out in this sort of like neurotic way where everything has to be pre-calculated and planned. But write down some of this stuff. Buy a journal, buy a pencil, buy the books on my book list, do the reflective work, buy the meditation cushion, sit on it, do the meditation. Don't be afraid to inquire into your own mind. Don't be afraid to just look into your own mind. This is something that a lot of humans are afraid of. We're afraid of looking into our own mind. Why? I'll leave you to figure that one out if you really want to know why. Buy Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark by Robert Augustus Masters. Buy some good books on shadow work. Learn spiral dynamics and look at the lower stages of development and see some of the nastier things that are existing inside of our human minds. And then learn to bring gentle attention to a lot of these things inside of you and learn to meet them with an open heart so that you're not acting out of the sort of lower tendencies of human nature. Addiction, craving, selfishness, endless greed, right? Selfishness in the sense that your agenda doesn't incorporate the well-being of any other beings. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.